Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Um, and on behalf of DPLA, welcome to our coffee chat today. Um, our goal today is really just to have a lively discussion for our network to be able to ask questions, give insights, and collaborate on our shared challenges. So if you don't know me already, my name is Dominic Bird McDevitt, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement for DPLA. And I'm going to be joined by my colleagues Tanya and Kevin later, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves too when they speak. Um, so first, just some housekeeping. This is a Zoom meeting and not a webinar. So we have a few things we want to say from DPLA at the top, but we also want to leave much of the hour for discussion. So please feel free to jump in or get things started in the chat. If any of you want to turn on your cameras to make it more personable, please feel free and kind of come off of mute when we're discussing. So we are recording. I just pressed the record button, but I do edit all recordings. So please don't let that stop you from speaking up, because you can also just DM me privately if you want me to edit out anything, so that we can still have a conversation. But also, if you don't want to be on camera at all, like I said, feel free to use the chat for questions or comments. You won't be on the recording if you use the chat. You'll find our recording posted to our YouTube channel, hopefully in just a few days or less. And you can also find any of our prior recorded webinars at our YouTube channel as well. So like I said, I want to just say a few short words before we'll have a short demo. So today we're here to discuss digital accessibility, which is a very important topic both for kind of moral, professional, ethical reasons, primarily, as well as the policy and kind of compliance reasons that have made this topic an even higher concern for a lot of you. So I just want to start by acknowledging that first category, because DPLA's Cultural Heritage Metadata aggregation program is first and foremost, about access. We are aggregating cultural heritage, and we operate, a single search portal to the nation's cultural heritage, for the purpose of maximizing access, expressly for that purpose as our mission states, maximizing access to our shared history, culture, and knowledge. So accessibility is just an important component of access. But of course, to that second category also, DPLA really comes at this conversation, I think, kind of later to the game than a lot of you guys did. And I think also with fewer resources and experience kind of already having been pointed at it than some of your institutions. So as a small nonprofit, we don't or haven't necessarily had the same sort of compliance pressures that many others in the field have had, especially those of you at public institutions. So when we first started hearing questions from our partners about accessibility, and especially questions about like whether we had conducted a formal audit, or some specific issues about our interface, it is important to point out it's also been has occurred during a major organizational transition for us in a time of limited capacity. So some people in this room might have gotten some of our initial responses saying, we're partners, we're not vendors per se. We've never been required to do that. And so I think a lot of this also comes from acknowledging that that certainly wasn't like satisfactory on either side of the communication. And so we also know that a lot of folks in the field have been worrying about a federal compliance deadline, which was originally in April. So things started to change for us probably around the beginning of this year. And that's when, not just with increased inquiries, but also with the work that Tanya, our program manager, has been doing to research and better understand the topic. And also later in the spring, we were very lucky to bring on board Kevin Pairavi, who's a new part-time technical consultant. And while it's still very early days, has helped us to actually implement some of the kind of actionable quick wins, at least on our own site. So I wanted to just take a breath there, and before we go further, just turn it over to Kevin first to walk through some of the concrete UI changes that we've already adopted.
Thanks, Dominic. Yeah, like Dominic mentioned, I'm Kevin. I'm a software developer and Wikipedia contributor. And I've joined in the late spring and this summer to help out on the software side of things. And one of the things I've been focusing on is, of course, accessibility. Um, we've had a number of open accessibility issues that we've been able to close in the last month or so. Many of these issues were actually reported by Megan from Illinois. So thank you, Megan. And a lot of these changes are, of course, kind of minor changes, either to the HTML structure that you can't even visibly see, or just minor changes to the HTML. But of course, they're very important, right, for user experience. And I'll just be highlighting a few of these changes. Probably one of the bigger ones is if you do a search on the DPLA website, whether on the top level DPLA or one of your partner websites. Previously, there were issues with the sidebar being accessible. Just the HTML DOM structure wasn't friendly for screen readers or for users trying to use it in a tab-like interface. So just on the kind of on the back end, the structure has been adjusted to play better with screen readers, as well as if you're just tabbing through with your keyboard, you can use your enter key and tab key to kind of navigate this structure. And also some link color updates. So for example, the links within the sidebar has been changed to be more kind of that orange link color, to be more visibly pronounced as a link, as well as these external links, these viewful item links you see in the actual search results. Previously, the little icon you see with the arrow pointing out, that was a different link color that could cause accessibility issues in some of your partner sites. So that's been fixed to match the actual link color of the website. Another quick win that impacts just a few of our partners was previously on sites such as Illinois, this Learn More link beneath the search box didn't have a background color. So it will kind of blend in to the background image. So whatever background image the partner selected, that could have caused an accessibility issue. Now we have a kind of dark background that's applied there. So there should be pretty much no issues moving forward, regardless of whichever background image a partner picks. And then beyond that, some of the issues we fixed are, again, just minor contrast issues throughout, some structural changes, some data related to captioning for videos. Those are things I can't really practically demo because they're not really visible changes, but they do make an impact for accessibility. We're going to continue exploring this summer accessibility issues and fixing them. Of course, if anyone notices any issues on their side, you're more than welcome to reach out to us either via email, or if you're familiar with GitHub, you can actually just open a GitHub issue in our DPLA front end repository. So I'll pass it back to Dominic.
Cool. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we've done a bit. We do have to qualify all this by saying that we're still in the midst of a technical transition. We still need to fully understand where the needs and priorities are for continuing the work on our side and the resources that we're going to have for it. But that's kind of where I want to emphasize DPLA's other main function, aside from being an aggregator in the products that we develop, which is that we're a library network and a convener of practitioners like everyone in the room today. So I think it's really important to point out, as Kevin was alluding to, that pretty much all this work so far that we've done on accessibility has really been externally driven by our network. And so I think everything that Kevin shared were reports made from at least, I think, three different hubs. And we also met and discussed with some key folks in our network along the way who've been really insightful. So many of you are far ahead of us, both in kind of the competency in the area, and also like how long you've actually been working on this. So that's where I kind of want to turn the discussion, not just to DPLA acting as the expert, but as the platform. So we're here to take notes from all of you too, as much as to share. So to do that, first I wanted to turn it over to Tanya to talk more about the journey that we've been on and get the conversation started.
Thank you, Dominic. And thank you so much, Kevin, too. And I just want to take a moment to share how I came to deep dive into this topic. And Dominic did some of that framing already, but just to say that I'm in no way an accessibility expert, but as a librarian that works on digital projects, I know the significance and priority of this for all of us in the field. So it was a huge privilege to be able to do some more reading and research on this topic and to learn about advancements in the field. And as Dominic mentioned, when the compliance deadline extension came through earlier this year, it was really a prompt and moment of pause for us at DPLA to ask ourselves, how might we make use of this extension to really get a firmer, stronger grasp on where things stand with our website? So we started digging deeper, reading about what a real audit, a real, formal audit would look like. And we especially wanted to know about and lean on the expertise of our partners. And that's what led us to Megan. One of the things I really love about and appreciate about the DPLA network is the rich web of expertise that it represents. And library people, one of our superpowers, I think, is that we're all about information and research sharing and also collaboration. So Megan Pearson, who coordinates work at Illinois' Digital Heritage Hub under CARLI, or the Consortium of Academic and Research Libraries in Illinois. Megan has been doing this work in a really thoughtful, practical way, running accessibility evaluations on their DPLA local instance and elsewhere, and using tools like Axe Dev Tools and others. And when we reached out to learn from her, she had been posting to our GitHub. She was so generous with her process. One thing that she shared that really stuck with me was the idea that meaningful accessibility work doesn't require perfection all at once, but that it requires commitment, consistency, and progress. And that frame was really illuminating. So we asked her to kind of help us kick off this coffee chat today by sharing what she's been doing and learning. So again, just to introduce her, Megan Pearson is a project coordinator at the Illinois Digital Heritage Hub and a library services coordinator at CARLI. She's been doing fantastic accessibility evaluation work and is here to share more on her process, including what she's learned and how she's thinking about next steps. So Megan, thanks so much for joining us, and over to you.
Yes, hello. Thanks, Tanya. I would start with if you haven't read the news post that they did, that says so much more clearly what I'm about to say, because I know this will be a little bit off the top of my head, just trying to think of things that I didn't explicitly say there, but that might be helpful to people here. So as Tanya mentioned, I have a very weird bureaucratic structure. Both of the partner organizations are the larger ones. They fell under the April 2026 deadline. We went into the work with the idea that we're not going to be 100% compliant by that deadline, but we need to make a good faith effort to show that we are trying to make it and doing what we can to improve. My department took kind of a shared responsibility approach. We were responsible for our own projects, websites, documents, videos, but in our spare time, we would help each other out. So that was kind of a challenge number one. I am the only IDHH staff, so all of the IDHH stuff fell to me. I had to take care of it, and I didn't want to ask my colleagues for help because they have their own work to do. We're a consortium with over 20 years of documents, videos, website pages, PDF files, which are a nightmare. So my colleagues have their own work to do, and I couldn't always rely on them. I could bounce ideas off, but I needed to do it myself and work with others as much or as little as possible. Um, so our general guideline is kind of an inverted pyramid, which I might be able to show at some point. But basically, the idea is reduce, remake, remediate. Um, Reduce as much as possible. If you don't need the document, the video, if it's on outdated systems like Voyager, if it's meeting minutes that are over, a certain number of years old, just take it down. Like, don't even have it up there anymore. Just get rid of it. And I know as a librarian who is very bad about hoarding data, that's hard to do sometimes. But that's so much easier than trying to actually remediate everything. If you don't need it, just get rid of it. So much simpler. Um, the next thing is remake it. If you have the source, go back to the source document file and remake it. So for example, if PDFs are a nightmare, if so, instead of trying to remediate a PDF, go back to the Word doc, make it accessible, and then don't save it as a PDF, lock it down, make the Word available for people because PDFs just apparently are evil and don't want to deal with them. So remediate is kind of the last resort. It's usually more time consuming, and I can say that myself. I had a couple of image files that were on the IDHH website that because of our changes in aggregation software and also trying to make it more future proof in, case that I'm not always the person doing this project, making it more just kind of generic in general. Um, I had a JPEG and it would have looked horrible trying to edit it. So what I ended up doing was just recreating it in PowerPoint. And then now I have the original file, and that a file is always available for us now. It's saved somewhere because one of my predecessors didn't save the file. So save your files. Um, Lessons learned, I think. It's easier to make things accessible from the start than have to go back and remediate. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people that I have very specific templates and fonts and settings and colorings. They're not accessible. So if I want to share those with people, I can't use that. But accessibility is important. So I want to be sure that people can use the documents and read them instead of having my preferred font that nobody can actually read except me. Um, I think Tanya kind of alluded to this, but have a plan. You can't do everything all at once. Kind of do a review of what's available, what you have, figure out what is critical, and then start with, remediating that or whatever you need to do to make it accessible, and then go from there. And I know that is easier said than done. Um, because I'm at a university, we have an amazing resource that maybe not everybody can afford, which kind of ties into another point of sometimes spending money on the problem is the best solution. If you can pay someone to do a review, or if you can pay for a higher quality tool that can give you more accurate or clear results. We have available to us at my institution several different free versions that work pretty well, but those are kind of like a page by page basis. And when you have, 200 million website pages, you don't really want to go through one by one by one. So I've been using the free version of AxeDev to kind of like refine what errors I run into, and those are what I shared with Kevin on the GitHub. But my institution pays for the bigger version of AxeDev, which actually runs a report on the entire website and then gives you different pages and which critical issues and kind of breaks it down for you. And when you have, 200 million websites, that's so much easier to look at than trying to do it page by page by page and guessing what you need to do. And along those lines, if you have the time, try a couple of different tools. I like AxeDev. My boss hates AxeDev and likes A-Inspector. I hate A-Inspector because it looks too tech to me. So what works for you, as long as it's actually a quality tool, it's good. And then also kind of the idea that I think is in the blog post. It's not just using tools because those aren't perfect. You kind of need to check it yourself, either using the tab or if you're available, you can use a screen reader. Some of them have free demos, a lot of them don't because they want you to pay for it. But there are a couple of different options out there that I would definitely recommend. I can definitely give you the link to AxeDev. I have a big long list of resources to share with everybody. I will share my universities because I think they're awesome. You might not be able to watch the trainings, but hopefully that will help people and kind of give them an idea. So I think I covered everything, Tanya, but let me know if there's anything else to touch on.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was awesome. I think at this point we just, are there any questions for Megan from folks in the room? Or we could just use any of what Megan surfaced as a jumping off point to open the discussion. But if folks from here want to just, yeah, feel free to, unmute and share, also what your institution is working on, what you are working on, what you're learning, what's been hard. This is like an open floor for discussion. We could start with the question in the chat that just came in from Megan, from Shauna Jones. They're asking, what are your solutions to PDF remediation, internal remediation, sending to third parties?
Yes. So for us, that is internal remediation. We are a state university, so we can't really send it out to third parties as much as we would like to. And that's why one of our big solutions was just get rid of PDFs as much as possible because it takes a little bit longer for most of them to be remediated, which is not a very helpful answer, unfortunately. I wish there was a magic wand to wave.
Do we have anyone else in the room that we can put on the spot that has any experiences that you want to share? I mean, in particular, what is working for you at your institution, but also if there's challenges or struggles that you've faced? Yeah, go ahead, Sean, and you can just speak up if you want.
Hey, can you hear me? I have headphones
Yes.
in. Okay. Hi, I am a graphic designer and accessibility specialist at DeKalb County Public Library in Georgia. I am officially 6 months on this job, so I'm new to this role, but I um, came in and thankfully they had already started working on compliance for the deadline that this past April. So I came into a enthusiastic but overwhelmed couple people who are working on it. We have a couple of websites under our umbrella. So I was just gonna kind of explain like what we did the last 6 months if anyone's interested. Um, so I am a CPAC certified. I am a certified professional in accessibility core competencies through IAAP. If anyone's interested in expanding your accessibility knowledge, I personally like the training and the certification. And if you want to go down that road, I think it's worth it. So I've been doing this for about 5, 6 years. So basically, I was like a consultant for the library in my role here. And we just made a giant checklist of like websites. We got an external audit on some, I did internal audits on others. We made a list of every PDF we owned. And like Megan said, can we get rid of it? Can we change it to a digital form? We also had a lot of smaller stuff too. And one of my main goals was like, I can't do this all myself. Like, I just can't. I'm the single person and it's not even technically my job. I do something else. So really my goal was to like train other people to make single page best practice documents and to like have other people help me. So like I made a one pager on what is alt text and I made like a little tree like is it a headshot? Is it a book cover? And like library specifics. And now all my staff have that and they write alt text. I don't do that because I can't for all of our images. I did the same thing with a one pager on how our captions and transcripts work on Zoom. And now they all have that, and all their meetings, they deal with that. And so that was kind of our goal the last 6 months, was like a giant, giant checklist, and how can I have other people help me? And everyone's been really awesome. Like they've all taken it in stride. There's been a couple people who are like, I want to help, but I can't take this on full time. Who can help me? Um, so PDF remediation, we still are looking for a solution on the more complicated documents. I can remediate 1 or 2 pages myself, but our 30-page calendar booklets I can't do. So also looking for any tips on that if people have anything. I think it's just manual work though, unfortunately. But I think that's kind of like a quick overview of our last 6 months of what we've been working on. So
That's super interesting, Shauna. I, yeah, I think something that I've learned recently across conversations is that like oftentimes like we're really understaffed to be able to take on like super comprehensive formal audits internally. So like the idea of like mixing both internal and external support, and then also bridging more collaboration across departments to be able to build internal capacity for this type of work. I wonder if anybody else in the room has, stories that they might share from their institutions about how they've built internal collaboration or recruited support from different departments for tackling this challenge together. Katie wrote in the chat, Shauna, in response to what you shared, that they would love to see those one pagers if you're willing to share those out. I think that could be a really cool reference for folks.
yeah, I can share 2 of the documents about alt text and Zoom. Our other ones aren't finalized yet. And, I would just give the disclaimer of I made those documents for our system. So like we use Communico for our events. Like maybe you don't use that, but I mean, hopefully these are good. They're there for you if they're helpful, and you can tweak them however you want. I'm gonna
That's
put my
awesome.
email in the chat. People can
Cool.
email me.
Cool. Thanks so much. Rachel, you mentioned working with digital collections and working on making digital collections compliant. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're struggling with or coming up against?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, we use Content DM for our digital collections, and I just would love if the vendor or someone would say like do XYZ and um, you'll be in compliance, or if they're like ALA has a little bit of information about the what libraries need to do, but it's so broad, and I'm in no way, shape, or form a lawyer. And like I've looked at the actual um the what is it called? The legalese. And I kind of understand, but I'm not gonna base any decisions off of my understanding. And so I feel like even though the deadline has passed, we're still just kind of doing a wait and see, um, which isn't really satisfactory. And yeah, I just feel like we're um, I don't know, just like not treading water, but just hanging out in the background.
Yeah, Tracy, please feel free to chime in.
Hi. Well, I feel like Rachel asked for dumbed down language. I'm very capable of giving that. Just sharing what we're doing at Digital Maryland. And Rachel mentioned Content DM. And I guess the first thing we did is we wrote an accessibility policy and put it on our homepage. If anyone looks for it, they can find it. And then I was at, I guess, office hours for Content DM, and someone mentioned that they were writing a script that they could place a banner on every single item on our page that marks it as archival content. And if anyone needed help accessing this item, there's an email there that they can email us directly. So that was a little bit of kind of covering our asses until we could figure out a real plan. Moving forward. And I still struggle because again, I'm not a lawyer. I read the language for the compliance and I'm like, okay, I think we fall under that. We put this stuff up before April 24th, 2026, and we're offering anyone access that can't use what we have up there. So I think our plan as of now, unless I hear someone has a better plan that I can follow along with, is to leave all those things up on our site and then do all the things you all have been talking about with alt text, not doing PDFs anymore. So moving forward, I guess we're trying to create a plan that we can stick with that will put us in compliance for anything new that we put up. And we'll cross our fingers and hope that we're heading in the right path there.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Claire, please.
I'm coming from the Albertsons Library at Boise State University, and totally different side of it. I'm in the interlibrary loans team. And so most of what we're trying to figure out is not stuff that we produce, but from our vendors and how to get them on board with being compliant. And then most of our struggles is we have the Office of General Counsel from the university, we have library admin, we have our OIT, that and our Office of Compliance that are all kind of helping us manage, but nobody's giving us real answers. So I'd love to hear from anybody else in the resource sharing side of things, how like what you're doing to make things as compliant as you can. And really, I guess, what our responsibility is. And we're a state university also, so I know we have this on our shoulders.
I'm not our resource sharing person at West Virginia University, but I have worked with our resource sharing department a little bit around accessibility. And one of the things that we did very early on was to put in this is for things that we're borrowing from other institutions and providing to our faculty, staff, and students is, do you need an accessible copy? I think that there's some like people in the like accessibility world who feel like maybe that doesn't meet compliance, but for in order for us to be able to make the things accessible to the people who need them to be accessible, and it could be, that they're a professor who needs to put it on course reserves. It could be like we don't ask why they need an accessible copy, but we added like a flag for people to indicate that they need an accessible copy of something that they're receiving. And that way, we're only remediating like maybe, 10 documents a semester instead of thousands, how I don't know exactly how, I mean, it's so many things we're providing via interlibrary loan. It just isn't practicable, but we can, and we have some like it's flagged in the system, so it sends something to the person who makes that request to let them know it might take a little bit longer for them to get the document, but then we have somebody who's trained to remediate those PDFs before they go. Something else that we've been doing, not so much in resource sharing, because I think it's a little bit trickier there, is that like if somebody's putting something in course reserves, is going to the vendor and asking them for a remediated copy, because, you know, we have limited resources and they have limited resources, but if we know somebody's going to be using something, we are asking vendors like, hey, can you, and most of them, some of them are better than others, but most of them have been able to do that. Something else that we've been playing around with is the ASU, OSU, AWS PDF remediation tool to see if it's something that's feasible, especially for some of our bigger collections, like our electronic theses and dissertations in particular, because we have thousands and thousands of those that are not compliant. And our understanding is that it doesn't really qualify as an archive probably. So we need to have like some plan to for remediation. Like there's no way that we can meet the deadline, but we feel like if we at least have a plan in place to start that remediation process, that we're in a better place. If there were to be an issue.
Do you know in your resource sharing team, if they are they the ones doing the remediation on the documents when they need to?
Yes, there's somebody on the resource sharing team who is doing it.
Okay, thank you.
I can put my email in the chat if you want to email me. I can connect you to the resource sharing folks if you
Okay.
want to pick their brains.
Yeah, I would love to because I think that's part of the problem is getting trained in how to do that kind of work is a whole nother level beyond finding who needs it and who doesn't and what we can
And even
offer.
then, there's a limit to what you can do if it's like a very technical document with very intense, images and charts and graphs and things like that. Like, if you're
Yeah,
not an expert in that field, there's a limit to what you can remediate.
yeah. Thank you.
So based on that, return to books. All right. So can I also return?
Scrolling back into the chat to see what else has come in that I could maybe read aloud. Let's see. I had a comment from Aurora who said, my archival collections are very much taking an approach of, quote, add an archival disclaimer, unquote, to materials created before 2026. We do have an accessibility policy in the pipeline, which will cover the creation of accessible materials on request. We are not using generative AI because we don't have the resources to individually check all of our materials.
Now, also from DPLA's perspective, I think one of the things that's been interesting or challenging for us is that our offerings are kind of a mixed bag. You know, our CMS for our static web pages, including the pro site, are WordPress based. We also, of course, have the search and item pages that are basically custom built. And it's a sort of a digital collection site, except since we're an aggregator, it's mostly just composed of written metadata and thumbnails, which is a little different from hosting the full resolution archival media. But then having said that, we do have some curated content, which does have full resolution and even AV materials embedded. And we also sit in kind of a third party relationship to most of our contributors. as an aggregator, but then we do have this product, the DPLA locals, which Megan was talking about too, where we host a discovery site for some of our partners in a more explicit partnership as part of the membership agreement. So we have a lot of like these things that I think we're still wrapping our heads around. Having said that, one thing I did want to show, which Kevin was talking about a bit too, is on our GitHub, which is where all of our front end code lives. We have opened up our issue tracker. So this is one way to reach out to us if you have things, suggestions, or reports that are relevant to DPLA's actual offerings. And I'll put the link in the chat as well. But all of our user-facing code is in this DPLA front end repository on GitHub. If you have a GitHub account, it's fairly easy to create an issue here, and then that notifies us right away. But you can, of course, always just email any of us on the team if you want to get in touch with us too. Let me put this link in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. Folks are sharing tools in the chat too. I wonder if we could spend a couple of minutes talking about tools as well. Courtney mentioned like a repository accessibility toolkit shared through DSpace. I don't know if Courtney, if you want to share on what you felt has been useful about that toolkit. Jessica also mentioned that they've been exploring with JSTOR SQLite for transcription. Looks like OCR, handwritten docs, metadata creation, and some alt text. Would really love to hear more about your experience with these tools, or if there's other tools that you're finding particularly useful. Megan mentioned XDev tools and XMonitor. There's a couple of other tools that are mentioned in our blog post that we put up as well, but folks want to share, kind of geek out about tools as well, we could use some of the space here to do that.
I can give a little bit of context. So TDL, Texas Digital Library, is a consortium, and we host open source systems and infrastructure, and we also pull together member groups around them. So we are not, as TDL, we're not uploading any content. This is all user content, and this is across a membership who, as I think we've heard in this conversation and in a lot of other conversations, have vastly varied interpretations of the requirements. And so the position we're taking, we've always worked to advocate and contribute development so that all of our systems are compliant in terms of the system itself. And appreciate that work and how hard that is, Kevin. So thanks for digging in there. So what we are doing as a consortium is asking that from each of our services, task forces come together and collect applicable tools and resources to make it easier for each of these institutions to apply the rules as they see fit. And I will say with DSpace specifically in that group, we've also recommended, similarly to what Content DM has recommended, having some language in the banner or somewhere in the footer about who to contact, basically, if you need special access to any of their content. So yeah, the one that I shared is a link to that DSpace users group one, and there is some DSpace specific content, but most of it are resources that are going to be useful and applicable across a lot of different repository types. And so I encourage that one. We've also, for all of our other services, we've had task forces to build sets of resources specific to software. So like we have them for ETDs, we have them for open journals, and we continue to work on it over the course of the next year. So that's the context for that. No specific tool recommendation, just a resource that you might find useful that does point to some tools, but just sharing that, and I'll stop.
Thank you, Courtney. That was so helpful. Jessica, do you want to share on your use of tools?
I mean, I can just briefly talk a little bit about how we've been using SQLite. So I'm not the primary person using it, and so I think the project team that's been working really hard on it is probably better suited, and you may see them. I think they're planning to do some presentations and things in this space. But basically, we're doing a lot of like testing to see, what the output is. Is it worth it? Like with the metadata creation, is it accurate? We have some metadata librarians who are doing like analysis on like we're using a lot of collections that have already been described to compare like the output from SQLite to what people use to describe the collections to see how it compares. And then also the same thing with the transcription. We have Civil War telegrams collection that's all 19th century handwriting, and so they're using the transcriptions that were done by people and comparing them to SQLite. And so I'm not sure what the outcome of the project is going to be. It's a somewhat expensive product to use, but if it can I mean, we have so many like hundreds of pages of documents that it would take, a human like we would have to have like a whole like, army of people working on it full time for like years to so if there's a way and if it's accurate and if we can like find a way to use it effectively, that would be great. I don't know kind of what we'll be doing, whether we'll keep it or whether we will like look for alternatives or if there are alternatives, I don't know. But it's just something that we're exploring as a potential way. They just are rolling out, or they had testing for the alt text for images. We have a 50,000 photo, almost 55,000 photo collection. And so if we can find a way to help generate the alt text for that collection. That's also something that we might be interested in. And so I think we did some testing around that. Unfortunately, I don't have any good concrete, like, yes, this works great and please use it. It's more like we're just trying to figure out whether it might work. And so, yeah, JSTOR has been really great to work with. They're having office hours. I think once a month. They did a lot of really great training. And so that team has been really good to work with, I think, from my outsider perspective.
Thanks so much, Jessica. We have a couple more minutes if anybody else wants to, open mic here, we'll just react to what Jessica was sharing, or Courtney, or, we can, any related topic, if we have a couple of minutes, so feel free to use this space. Dominic, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to point out this question in the chat. I
Oh,
don't know if
yeah.
anyone here feels like they can answer, but Katie just threw out, for those of you who have specific reasons to avoid third-party vendors, how have you balanced out the workload with your staff? Do you have interns doing any of the work, someone specific assigned to it? I feel like staff time is the toughest thing for us. Go ahead, Shauna.
We have a much smaller, task than a lot of you, but like I said, I've tried to train as many people as possible and like I've spent a lot more time training than actually remediating things or because I know that in the long run that's going to help me more. So if you're thinking about how to delegate the people who are trained, you might have to spend more of your time training other people than actually doing the work, at least up first. This is a lot. This is a marathon. This is not something that's just to be compliant before the deadline, but this is something you have to do forever moving forward. So that to me is how I'm spending my time. But one thing I did make clear though is to my boss and my boss's boss is that this is not a choice. This is necessary. And at the end of the day, even though it may be the intern's job to add alt text, if that alt text isn't there, they're calling the boss. You're going to get the lawsuit to the boss. And so my boss has taken that in stride and is really understanding that he needs to be involved and he needs to at least follow what's going on. So I think that's also, no matter who is doing the work, everyone should be aware of it, at least in some shape or form. And at the end of the day, it is your organization's responsibility, just like the safety of your buildings or anything. It's going to come down, like something happens, people up top are going to have to answer, not the intern.
I think that work is really important, the advocacy on campuses in particular. The library was kind of one of the kind of uh, people who is kind of needling the provost's office, like, hey, this is happening. We need to have like a campus-wide kind of thing going on. It can't just be the libraries. It can't just be like somebody who works in systems in the libraries to like do everything. Like it's a campus-wide thing. And like I think it was coming from different places on campus, but we were able to hire somebody who's like a digital accessibility program coordinator to kind of do some of the campus level work that needed to be done that we can in the library can look to for like policies and training resources and things that we don't have the capacity to do internally.
I think advocacy is a really strong note to end on. And yeah, just want to like kind of take a moment to celebrate all of you for the behind the scenes, work that you do, improving accessibility to collections and to information. Thank you. And thank you so much for um, all of your generous offerings and sharing today. Like Dominic said, toward the beginning of this coffee chat, we really are absorbing a lot of like knowledge and expertise, from you all, from the network, and so much of the improvements that have been made to DPLA's interface has been externally driven. And so that's also advocacy, and that's also like, so much gets done when people start advocating and making um, uh, people aware of the issues and what needs to be resolved specifically. So just really appreciate all of you for being here today and for sharing your knowledge. Dominic, is there anything I'm missing in terms of like closing or next steps? I know you already talked about the GitHub and made sure that people were aware about how to post there.
Yeah, no, I just want to echo what you said. Anyone, feel free to reach out to us if you have anything specific to DPLA. I think it's been a really rich conversation, and obviously it's an evergreen topic that's going to continue to be relevant. So again, like Tanya said, thanks to everyone for your generosity and speaking up and making the conversation happen, and hopefully can continue to happen. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you so much.